Hello everyone, DN Olo here, and today, yeah, well, we're going into reacting to this video here, and despite what the red bar says, I have not seen. I clicked on it, saw the first like couple of seconds. For some reason, like half the time when that happens, YouTube just puts the whole long red bar. It's stupid, and also, I'm not lying when I'm saying that I have not watched this video that we're going to be watching today. Okay, I mean, at the very least, when I say, when it comes to these reactions, I'm honest about whether or not I've seen something. Like, for example, here. Oh man, there's a lot of phlegm stuck in my throat. Right. As I was saying, for example, this one, I mean, in this video, I did say that I saw the video that I was reacting to in this video right here before I, like, my answer before, so that's proof that, that if I've seen a video that I'm going to be reacting to before, I will tell you, and I am going to be honest, I have not seen this video except for like a couple seconds of it. Anyway, enough with that disclaimer out of the way. Today we're going to be reacting to.
Hi, my lovelies. Long
Uh,
time
uh,
no see.
pause, 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 pause. Pause. Alright. So yeah, anyway, in this video, I'm going to be reacting to is titled Greg Heffley vs. Nikki Maxwell. Now, Greg Heffley is the main character of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books. I've seen, I've read those books, and I've seen the first two films and all that. I mean, I haven't read all the books in the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series, because that's like way too many, but I've read like the first 8 or 9 books in the series, and I gotta say, I definitely, enjoyed the first few books. Over the years, I think the quality of writing has kind of declined and all that. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen Diary of Wimpy Kid, and I'm guessing Nikki Maxwell. That's just from the thumbnail as well. I believe that's the main character of the Dog Diaries. I've not read any of those books, so I'm not familiar with any of that. But I have seen the books before. I haven't read them, but I've seen the like covers and whatnot, like at those school book fairs, for example, or maybe in a school like library or something. I've never read them since the kind of si- the very much the target demographic is girls. That, and in case you didn't know, I'm a boy. But yeah, who knows? Maybe this video might convince me to read the books and all that. I don't know. But anyway, let's get into it. And I just realized how long this video is. It's really long. Uh, hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I don't know if I might split into multiple parts, or I'll just like pause halfway through and like react to the rest of it like a couple hours later or something. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, let's get into it.
This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hi, my
Uh, I'm not too familiar with this YouTube channel either. Hey. I don't know. For the past like 2 minutes, it's been like a tick in my throat, and I don't know why. I'm going to adjust the mic here so that way there's less of an echo. Hopefully, you'll be able to hear me when I speak. Yeah, I really ought to get a microphone, and you know, I think I will get a microphone. Yeah, you know that's it. I'm going to get a new microphone soon. Hopefully, it doesn't get lost in the mail or something. Yeah, you know, I think I'm gonna do that. Alright, enough with the preamble. Let's get into the video here.
Lovelies, long time no see.
Oh man, I just knocked over my camera. I'm picking it up. Sorry about that.
As most
Oh, that's cute.
of you know, I've covered the children's graphic novel series Deardom Diary in depth on my channel, but people more commonly than not tend to associate this style of graphic novels with books like Diary of a Wimpy Kid or Dork Diaries. Naturally, because of this, my comment section has been flooded to take that same kind of dive into those series the way I did with Jamie Kelly. However, I feel like the reason I chose to cover that specific series in the way I did had everything to do with my love for Jim Benton as an author, as well as the lack of discussions about that specific series online. But a couple years ago, Curtis Connor did a video called Barbie vs. Bratz, which is exactly what it sounds like. He gave a bit of background on the Barbie vs. Bratz feud, watched a movie from each of the doll lines, and then picked a winner, said which one he liked the best. So what I thought could be fun, since both series have practically been covered to filth, is if I bought the first book from each series to discover who's worse.
This is a funny treat right here.
Or who's better. But first, let's have a word from today's sponsor, Squarespace.
No, not a big fan of the piercings. But other than that, you know, so far so good. I wonder how old he is. He looks young.
To Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. And now let's get back to the battle of the century. Diary of a Wimpy Kid is a series of children's graphic novels first created by Jeff Kinney in 1998. Although the first book in the series was published on April 7th of 2007, Jeff would take 8 years to work on the concept before ever showing it to a publisher. BGH, before Greg Heffley, Jeff Kinney worked for a company called Pearson Education. Specifically, he was involved with one of their websites some of you may be familiar with, Funbrain, which I absolutely used to be obsessed with. When it comes to the early history of Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Funbrain actually played a prominent role, because later in 2004, Funbrain would end up being the first place. Actually played a prominent role, because later
I think I've used this website before. Oh, a long time ago.
Later in 2004, Funbrain would end up being the first place that Diary of a Wimpy Kid was published for the world to see. But along with
Yeah, I've heard about it. I've heard that the first 8 chapters end up being published here and that, and then later they were published in book form. And I didn't become acquainted with the series until after the books were being published and all that. So I never read them on this website here. Not that I did watch a video before that did explain, some of the differences and between the two. And like for example, in the web series, Greg's video game console is described as being a PlayStation, but if you read the books, it never tells you what kind of brand the game console
Funbrain,
is.
another game Pearson Education helped.
And I just remembered that this is kind of low because the no, I'll turn it up. Hopefully you were able to hear that or something. Hmm. Right.
Create was Poptropka, which I did a deep dive into earlier this year, and you know who they had to was published for the world to see. But along with Funbrain, another game Pearson Education helped create was Poptropka, which I did a deep dive into earlier this year, and you know who they have to thank for that? Jeff Kinney. It was his concept and or idea, and he even remained a creative director and helped with the game years later. You see, Poptropka was launched in July of 2000.
Yeah, I remember Pop Tropica. I remember playing on that game. Oh, website or whatever you call it.
2007, making it just 3 months younger than Diary of a Wimpy Kid. It's safe to say that Diary of a Wimpy Kid has become hugely successful. It was almost an instant hit, really, with the first 3 movies, or if you count the hashtag we don't speak of, being released just 3 years later in 2010.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't think I've seen any of videos before.
And since 2007, 20 Diary of a Wimpy Kid books have been published, with the most recent, yet to be published actually. The publication date is just 3 years later in 2010. And since 2007, 20 instant hit, really, with the first 3 movies, or if you count the hashtag we don't speak of, being released just 3 years later in 2010. And since 2007, 20 Diary of a Wimpy Kid books have been published, with the most recent, yet to be published actually. The publication date is set for October 21st of 2025. So as of filming this video, it's not actually out yet, but I'm going to say 20 because it's likely a lot of you will be watching when it's already published. Unfortunately, Dork Diaries doesn't have any sort of movies, or they would be included in this video too. And a part of me hopes that we don't get any because I don't know that it would really do it justice. I mean, Dear Dumb Diary, Judy Moody, and Diary of a Wimpy Kid all had movies by 2013. The opportunity was just... it was missed. I'm sorry. Pack it up. Go home. Anyway, I love Diary of a Wimpy Kid so much, so this is no shade. Like, I promise, please don't burn me at the stake, Jeff Kinney. Like, I'll be honest too. I started reading the books before ever watching any of the movies, but it's no secret that the first book unfortunately lacks like this cohesive plot that the rest of the books have. And what I mean by this is, compared to the other books, book 1 is probably the most like diary coded. There's less of a timeline of events that flow together, or giving us information about our essential characters instead. So to
Hmm. Yeah, to be honest, I think and I think I kind of like the structure of the first book and all that. That it's a diary and therefore should make sense for that to have that format. Then again, the next few books after that, which do have a sort of overarching plot. I mean, I also do kind of like that as well.
me, it gets a pass since this is the first book after all. Generally, most bodies of work become stronger over time, and in my opinion, book 1 still gets you hooked, which is doing its job. However, from the perspective of a YouTuber, this unfortunately made book harder to summarize than if I had picked a book later in the series. So to do some damage control, I ended up rewatching the movie with my girlfriend, simply because I've always admired the way this film made the events flow together so seamlessly, despite the book lacking cohesive plot. And I think for this reason, it's one of those rare cases where I genuinely prefer the movie over the book. I'm not saying that for...
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I said, the first film is definitely pretty good. Not that I kind of don't like some of the changes, like for example, they in the film they created a kid. I forgot her name. Let me look it up. Right. So the character at the end. Let's see. Hmm. Okay. That one's on. Nope. But can't seem to find the character here, but in the film they added a female actor in the film that does not exist in the series, and honestly, I kind of thought that was kind of pointless, and I just didn't like the decision and all that. I mean, honestly, I think that kind of goes with most film adaptation. I don't like when a film adaptation decides to just create an original character and all that. Yeah. Hmm.
For all of the movies to the books. I'm saying that for the first one. Not only is the casting so spot on, but they can all act. And there's a moment from almost every major main character that's simply funny because of the delivery, which I think can be rare from movies, especially these days, especially live action movies. Or maybe I'm just a hater. I'm sorry, I could be watching my favorite movie in the whole world and there could still be a character that I, for the life of me, don't like and can't appreciate. But let's redirect our attention to the book, shall we? I just had to appreciate the movies for a second because, come on now, they're classics. Greg is so interesting because as a kid, you don't really think that much of him as a character, but as you get older or continued reading the books or eventually reread the books, you realize he truly is, at his core, so mean. Originally, I was gonna say
He's definitely as one
an
grows up, it is definitely realized that he's fundamentally a selfish character. He's definitely very self-centered, pretty egotistical. Now, of course, somewhat famously, there's a video that kind of calls Greg Heffley a narcissistic sociopath. But I think that's a bit far. But definitely somewhat borderline narcissism. Uh, Greg Heffley definitely shows signs of borderline narcissism. Mm-hmm. Notice I would just put captions in my videos, except that I don't script these, and I kind of don't just writing a whole bunch and all that, and then in order to create captions, I would have to listen to everything I've said in this video. And one thing that I hate about just recording is, let's be real. Nobody likes hearing their own voice in a recording, especially me. Man. I'm not the biggest fan of my voice. Hmm. Anyway, moving
I
on.
remembered he's 12 years old, but this isn't some queen. Originally, I was gonna say an asshole, but then I remembered he's 12 years old. But this isn't some crazy reach of an opinion on him as a character. He genuinely is a mean spirited person, and we can tell right away from the very first entry. First of all, let me get something straight. This is a journal, not a diary. I know what it says on the cover, but when Mom went out to buy this thing, I specifically told her to get one that didn't say diary on it.
Man. Yeah, definitely the perspective of a 12-year-old boy.
Great. All I need is for some jerk to catch me carrying this book around and get the wrong idea. The other
Yeah, honestly, I think that's definitely part of the appeal is that, you definitely, find the character relatable if you're at the target demographic.
thing I want to clear up right away was that this was Mom's idea, not mine. But if she thinks I'm going to write down my feelings in here or whatever, she's crazy. So just don't expect me to be all Dear Diary this and Dear Diary that. The only reason I agreed to do this at all is because I figure later in life when I'm famous, I'll have better things to do than answer people's stupid questions all day long. So this book is going to come in handy. Once school begins, Greg immediately becomes fixated on making his way up this popularity chart. This is his first year of middle school and he really wants to make it count and put himself out there.
Oh, in hindsight, the dumber it is, that like, yeah, being obsessed with the popularity in middle school is honestly kind of dumb because nobody really cares that too much about what after you did in middle school. High school, maybe, but never middle school. Middle school tends to get kind of a bit forgotten and all that. Yeah, definitely very much the awkward phases of life. But then again, I guess every
Thinks
stage of
himself
life is somewhat awkward.
and he really wants to make it count and put himself out there. He ranks himself somewhere around 52nd or 53rd most popular, but in the movie he says 19th, which had me thinking, who could possibly be this self-centered? Greg Heffley, that's who. Do I think he's 53rd either? No. But 19? Let's be serious. The only person Greg seems to consistently hang out with is his best friend Raleigh Jefferson, a friendship which he describes as definitely subject to change. Greg and Raleigh met a few years ago when Raleigh was new to the neighborhood. I guess his parents had got him some book called How to Make Friends in New Places, and when he came up to Greg's door, Greg kind of felt sorry for him. And because he's so generous, he decided to take him under his wing, whatever that means.
Like, I know what it means, but I mean, like, to Greg, like, under.
Usually though, Greg has some kind of bone to pick with Raleigh, and most recently he's been avoiding him at school because Raleigh was asking him to come over and play in public when he's told him many times, like, you're supposed to say hang out, we're too old to be playing. I've been trying to be a lot more careful about my image ever since I got into middle school, but having Raleigh around is definitely not helping. The other important thing that is addressed near the start of this book is the infamous cheese touch debacle. Basically, somehow a slight
Yes, the most iconic part of the series. Or at least the most iconic part of the first book, anyway.
slice of cheese ended up on the basketball
Now you are making it is the most iconic part of the series. Who could forget the infamous cheese touch?
court, and for some reason, no one thought to like pick it up and throw it away. So obviously, it got moldy and gross. And people became so disgusted by this cheese, in fact, that kids stopped playing on this basketball court altogether. Until one day when this kid named Darren touched the cheese with his finger. Little did Darren know what he had just done, what he had just started. This single action created a phenomenon known as the cheese touch. Basically, it's like getting cooties. The rules were if you got the cheese touch, you'd be stuck with it until you'd pass it to someone else. The only way to protect yourself from the cheese touch is to cross your fingers, but it's not that easy remembering to keep your fingers crossed every moment of the day. I ended up taping mine together so they'd stay crossed all the time. I got a D in handwriting, but it was totally worth it.
It's definitely kind of funny how just arbitrate the rules is like, like you only having to touch somebody else, then for some reason you just lose it. But if you cross your fingers, you don't. It doesn't count.
Luckily, or maybe not so luckily for him,
My commentary is adding absolutely nothing to this video. Yeah, this is definitely one of my less good videos.
some kid who got the cheese touch in April ended up moving to California over the summer, taking the cheese touch with him. So this is a stress Greg doesn't have to deal with in his life anymore. While Greg Heffley is our main character, his older brother Roderick is arguably iconic in his own right. When I first saw him, I didn't know if I wanted him or wanted to be him. Spoiler, was the second one. Lately, Greg's dad has been harassing him to go outside rather than him just staying inside and playing video games all day. So instead of listening to his dad, Greg just walks up to Raleigh's house to play video games instead, which is becoming so annoying and inconvenient for him. However, Greg is appreciative of his time at Raleigh's for once because it gets him out of the house when Roderick's band is practicing. Roderick's band is really awful. I can't stand being home when they're having rehearsals. His band is called Loaded Diaper, only it's spelled like this on Roderick's van. You might think it's spelled that way to make it look cooler, but I bet if you told Roderick how Loaded Diaper is really spelled, it would be news to him. Now, Roderick plays heavy metal music while their dad hates heavy metal, but their mom was all for the idea of Roderick starting a band. And Greg thinks this is partially because she has this fantasy that they'll all learn to play instruments and then become a family band. Okay, SM6.
Don't flinch, challenge, go!
She even started dancing when Roderick bought one of those like parental advisor CDs, which I kind of think is cute, like, yes, Susan, support your kid's interests. This, however, bugged Roderick so much that he left for 15 minutes to go to the store and came back with a pair of headphones. Now, although Greg seems to just be complaining about Roderick's band and diss heavy metal music, because of the parent advisory sticker, he becomes determined to listen to this new CD that Roderick has bought. Mom and Dad never let him buy those CDs at the mall. Of course, this is Greg Heffley, so this does not go according to plan. One night when everyone was asleep, he decides to go downstairs and crank up the volume on the family stereo, but unfortunately for him, he forgets the crucial step of plugging in the headphones. So all he got instead was
I remember reading this. This was funny.
a 2-week video game ban. Fun fact about this video, it's unintentionally a Halloween special because it takes place during the fall-winter months. At least the beginning of the book does, but I always tend to associate this specific book with, like, Halloween. Just like me, Halloween happens to be Greg's favorite holiday, and this love is definitely universal in his family because his dad particularly loves Halloween, but for a different reasoning than Greg. On Halloween night, while all the other parents are handing out candy, Dad is hiding in the bushes with a big trash can full of water. And if any teenagers pass by our driveway, he drenches them. Initially, Greg had this whole awesome plan to score him and Riley more candy than the previous year, but Greg's mom ended up insisting the boys take Manny trick-or-treating. He tried to fight her on this, but it only led to his dad having to come with them. Though this doesn't last the whole night, eventually they are allowed to split off, and they do make up for the lost time. After trick-or-treating, they decide to walk back home, and unfortunately when they're about halfway, this pickup truck comes rolling down the street with a bunch of high school kids in it. OGs will remember I made a childhood trauma video probably years ago now, and one forgotten entry that I wish I could have included in that video is the trick-or-treating scene from the first Diary of a Wimpy Kid movie. Basically, at this point in the book too, but it's a bit different and, you know, it varies. Rowley and Greg get chased around by these teenagers because Greg yells out to them after, "We're calling the cops." The driver slammed on the brakes and he turned his truck around. Me and Rowley started running, but those guys were right on our heels. The only place I could think of that was safe was Grandma's house, so we cut through a couple backyards to get there. Grandma was in bed already, but I knew she keeps a key under the mat on her front porch. After a while, the boys determined that spending the night at Grandma's house would be the best option because those teenagers were just gonna wait it out for them. Greg's mom, however, did not approve of this idea and actually sounded mad on the phone when Greg called to inform her because it was a school night. So they had no choice but to simply make a run for it, and luckily made it back home in one piece, with the exception of Greg's dad drenching them in water the moment they got there. Out of everyone in this situation, I can't help but feel the worst for the grandma because not only were those kids making monkey noises in the middle of the night while she's trying to sleep in her own house, but the teenagers ended up toilet papering and egging her house. I do feel a little bad because it looked like it was going to take a long time to clean up. But on the bright side, Grandma is retired, so she probably didn't have anything planned for today anyway. But little did Greg know that
So terrible.
that would be the least of his worries. In his third period class, aka Phys Ed, they started a new wrestling unit that would last for the next 6 weeks. Apparently there's a lot of wrestling fans at Greg's school or something, cause starting that unit, in Greg's words, might as well set a bomb off. Kids began wrestling in the hallways, classrooms, you name it. He highlights 15 minutes outside after lunch as the worst time of all. You can't walk 5 feet without tripping over a couple of kids going at it. I just try to keep my distance, and mark my words, one of these fools is going to roll right onto the cheese and start the cheese touch all over again. So naturally,
Foreshadowing.
Greg thinks, well, I'll rent a couple video games in an attempt to learn some of the moves, which really does nothing for him whatsoever. Well, I found out today the kind of wrestling Mr. Underwood is teaching is completely different from the kind they do on TV. First of all, we have to wear these things called singlets, which look like those bathing suits they used to wear in the 1800s. And second of all, there are no pile divers or hitting people over the head with chairs or anything like that. There's not even a ring with ropes around it. It's basically just a sweaty mat that smells like it's never been washed before. Greg ends up getting singled out by his teacher, he assumes for his size, so that he can show the class some examples of wrestling moves. When it comes to being split up into weight groups, Greg is stuck with the person he'd probably least like to be that close to.
Wrigley.
Fregley was the only kid light enough to be in my weight class, and apparently Fregley was paying attention when Mr. Underwood was giving instructions, because he pinned me every which way you could imagine. I spent my 7th period getting way more familiar with Fregley than I ever wanted to be. Greg isn't exactly one for staying committed to things, but he becomes so desperate to move up in weight groups for wrestling that he announces to his parents he wants to bulk up
I remember how this event ends.
and gain muscle. This would actually be pretty awfully timed though, because at the same time his mom insists that Greg is going to sign up for the winter school play, even though he begs and pleads with her not to make him. But even with his dad on his side, they are just simply no match for Susan. The Wizard of Oz was chosen as the school's winter play, and even though he wanted no part in it, Mrs. Norton proudly declared that every person who auditioned would be getting a part. She also ends up showing the movie to the students, and by the end Greg is set on being a tree because they get to throw apples at Dorothy, aka Patty Farrell. Unfortunately, the actual costumes don't have armholes though, at least for now. They end up adding them later on because some kid fell and chipped his tooth. In the grand scheme of things, Greg though is very lucky to have at least gotten a speaking part, even if it is one word. When the play's only a few days away though, he starts getting scared because nobody is learning their lines, and it's sort of all Miss Norton's fault. Like, she's not letting people mess up their lines, she's instead attempting to whisper people their lines from the side of the stage. On top of that, she keeps adding new scenes, new characters, and the first grader brought in to play Toto won't be standing on all fours anymore because her mom complained to Miss Norton that it was too degrading. But the worst change is that Miss Norton actually wrote a song for us trees to sing. She said everyone deserves a chance to sing in the play, so today we spent an hour learning the worst song that's ever been written. Obviously those are all valid concerns, but Greg had another reason to be scared too. His older brother Roderick, he would be having a field day with this little singing tree act of his. Luckily the dress code was rather formal, and he just knew that Roderick would never wear a tie just for a school play. Or that's what he thought, at least. Because sure enough, on opening day, there he was, front row, with his clip-on tie. Eventually, when it's time for the trees to sing, he takes notice of Roderick holding this camera and simply decides not to sing. Because that's better than getting embarrassed, right? If he doesn't sing, he has nothing to work with. Well, Greg starts this domino effect, and soon enough the other two trees aren't singing either. In the corner of his eye, Greg notices Patty Farrell angrily staring him down from the side of the stage. Suddenly, Greg is reminded of why he wanted to be a tree all along, and starts throwing apples at Patty after all. Someone knocked the glasses off Patty's head, and one of the lenses broke. Miss Norton had to shut down the play after that because Patty can't see 2 feet in front of her without glasses. Shortly after the play was winter break and Christmas. And Greg really only had one thing he wanted for Christmas this year, a game called Twisted Wizard, which Rowley ended up getting, even though once his parents find out how violent that game is, he probably won't be allowed to play it anyway. Greg would have gotten it too if his mom had not wrapped the gift in the same wrapping paper as the gift they donated to the church for their Christmas charity, the Giving Tree. But you know what?
So that story is in this book, huh? Oh yeah, I forgot that was in this book, but yeah, I'm finding the payoff here.
He did get a weight set that he doesn't even care about, and I really felt bad for his dad in this moment, because not only is the unit over, but he completely lost interest and determination when it came to gaining weight and muscle. So his dad basically bought him this weight set for no reason. Not to fear though, Rowley ended up giving Greg a present as well, which was a big wheel. And although he wasn't thrilled, he did find a way to enjoy it in his own way. He created a game out of it. One person would ride down the hill in the neighborhood while the other's objective was to knock them off with a football. And the person riding the big wheel, even though it was Greg's gift, always ended up being Rowley. Most people with common sense would say, hey, that sounds dangerous. And you would
not to trouble your boys. Say that you average like middle school aged boy, and they don't care. Boys that age have they have Zero survivor instincts.
You're right, because a few days pass and Greg ends up finally successfully knocking Raleigh off, causing him to break his hand. And when they go back to school, Greg just seems more concerned that Raleigh is getting positive attention for this whole ordeal, because in his mind, he's much cooler than Raleigh. Like, a bunch of girls swarmed him at lunch so they could help feed him, and this especially pissed Greg off because his dominant hand isn't even the one that's broken, so he could feed himself just fine. Of course, Greg being Greg tried to bank in on Raleigh's newfound popularity, and at one point even tried to construct an injury of his own.
But both of these ideas backfired on him.
Thankfully, Greg moved on pretty quickly though, when in the morning announcements, Mr. Winsky announced there were going to be some openings on the school's safety patrol. And this was like a light bulb moment for Greg. Being on the safety patrol is like the equivalent in his mind to extra protection when it comes to being picked on or bullied at school. Plus, they were recruiting people for a special job. This was the elementary school next to him has a half-day kindergarten, and so the safety patrol being recruited would walk home the morning session kids in the middle of the day, which meant that Raleigh and Greg would get to miss 20 minutes of pre-algebra. So, a win-win opportunity. But speaking of opportunities, the other opportunity that presented itself to Greg during this time was a cartoonist opening in the school's newspaper. As we know from his many diaries,
this would be right up Greg's alley.
The current cartoonist was this kid named Brian Little, and his comic
I hope she shows the comic that they show in the book here.
Black Dog had made him a bit of celebrity around school. So Greg knew this was his shot to put himself out there doing something he actually enjoyed. The initial
Oh, she doesn't show the Wacky Dog comic. You know, I'll look it up real quick here. Yeah, the comic of the show, because apparently, you know, the person creating it decided to use this as advantage to take care of his own personal business. So basically, instead of having Wacky Dogs or something funny, he then just basically tries to apologize to this to Susan Lim here, and then in the end he also decides to remind Barry that he owns $5. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was a bit hard to find it, because apparently it has become a bit of a meme template. So yeah. Memes.
plan to team up with Raleigh and work on a comic for the paper, but let's just say they had some creative differences. I told Raleigh maybe we should come up with some new ideas, but he just wanted to keep
I remember this.
writing Zooey. Then he packed up his comics and went home, which was fine by me. The comic idea Greg ends up coming up with is titled Creighton the Creighton, and it actually won, which was exciting until it wasn't. You see, Miss Ira had made so many edits to Greg's comic that it was unrecognizable, and Greg felt that it was kind of ruined at this point. But again, little did Greg know that this would be the least of his worries and problems. The next morning, Greg and Raleigh were having hot chocolate with the other patrols like usual. This was one of the perks of being on the school safety patrol. And over the loudspeaker, Raleigh was called to the office. It turns out some lady in the neighborhood had seen Raleigh terrorizing the kindergartners, so Mr. Winsky yelled at him for 10 minutes and then suspended him of his patrol duties. As you can imagine, this put Greg in a pretty tough situation, because we know it was not Raleigh Jefferson that did this, and so did he. So we either had to confess to the crime and do the time, or simply let his innocent friend take one for the team. The reason that he had been mistaken for Raleigh was because he wore his raincoat with a giant R on it. Knowing that Raleigh was set to apologize to the kindergartners the next day, Greg had to figure out what he wanted to do quickly, and his mom that night at the dinner table could tell something was on his mind. And although Greg didn't give her very many details in regards to the situation, she gave him the advice of do the right thing, because it's our choices that make us who we are. Of course, because this is Greg Heffley, this advice truly went in one ear and out the other. So after Raleigh had already suffered the consequences of Greg's actions, he came clean to him. He claimed they could both learn valuable lessons from the situation, like that Rowley needed to be more careful who he lended his coat to, and after that, it didn't take much time for things to catch up with Greg. Soon enough, it was him that was actually suspended from his safety patrol duties, while Rowley received a promotion. I think it says a lot about Greg that he recalled the whole matter as Rowley backstabbing him, and all he could think about while being yelled at in Mr. Winsky's office was the lecture he needed to give his friend about loyalty. Literally, what are you talking about? Ever since he broke the news to Rowley, he's been ignoring him, rightfully so, and hanging out with another kid named Colin Lee. And Greg's response to this is to try to befriend Fregley to get back at him and make Rowley jealous.
A bad idea. One of his worst mistakes.
Only Colin Lee was actually meant to be Greg's backup best friend. So it's like even worse because he does not want to be friends with Fregley. But it is a little hard to feel bad for Fregley when going to his house for his sleepover was a bit of a horror movie scenario. For starters, Fregley stole a bag of jelly beans from Greg's bag and proceeded to eat the whole thing. Usually Fregley isn't allowed to be trusted with sugar, so within seconds he was bouncing off the walls from a little sugar high. Then comes the worst part, okay? Greg hides out in the bathroom to wait until he can leave, safely at least. Around 11:30 it gets really quiet and Fregley slips a note underneath the door which reads, "Gregory, I'm very sorry I chased you with a booger on my finger. Here, I put it on this paper so you can get me back."
Oh, man, so terrible.
At this point, it's been about a month since Rowley and Greg stopped being friends. Greg is no longer a part of the safety patrol, and he quit his cartoonist position in the school newspaper shortly after receiving it. He claims to not care who replaces him, but the moment Greg picks up the paper to find Zooey Mama right before his eyes, he could not care.
I had completely forgotten about that. This American. Oh my god. Oh my god. I feel like it's only gotten dumber with time. It does not make sense the more you think about it. And it's kind of terrible. It's honestly kind of so bad that it's good in a way.
More, actually. The only reason he picked up the paper to begin with was to see what was so funny. It's not really about Zooey Mama being in the paper, it's about the fact that everyone seemed to love it, and in his mind, his comic was miles better than Rowley's, just like everything else he does. After the weekend, Greg decides to confront Rowley about the comic, because in his eyes, Rowley's receiving praise for a comic that both of them created. But Rowley believes the opposite opinion, though, insisting that Zooey Mama was all his idea. And unfortunately, their argument starts to draw in a crowd, and pretty soon...
So this is where the climax is. Yeah, it's been a while since I've read this book.
People are egging them on to fight. But this is Greg Heffley and Rowley Jefferson. Who's throwing a punch? Before they can even decide what to do, though, everyone takes off running because some teenagers had just pulled up in this truck, and it turns out...
Chekhov's gun has been fired.
It was the same teenagers and their truck from Halloween night. Long story short, they make Rowley eat the cheese? Like the infamous molded slice of blacktop cheese touch cheese?
I wouldn't even do that to my worst enemy.
Of course, the next time everyone went outside, kids began to notice
You're a nice person. You seem very nice.
the cheese was gone off the blacktop. And people had their theories, which had Rowley nervous considering if this information got out to the public, he would be done for. That's when Greg decided to speak up for once. He claimed he was tired of seeing that cheese on the blacktop every day, so he just threw it away. Unfortunately for him, though, that was really poor wording because that implies that he touched the cheese, he picked it up, he threw it away. So everyone just freaked out and ran away because he had the cheese touch. But only one person really matters in this situation, Rowley, and this gesture really meant a lot to him. So shortly thereafter, the two would begin rekindling their friendship and hanging out after school again. Plus, according to Greg, having the cheese touch came with its perks. Like, for one, he got out of square dancing in phys ed, and also he had a lunch table every day all to himself. Beats eating on the floor, right? Well, I can only assume in this book that they eat on the floor because they do in the movie, but they don't ever show them doing it in the book. That makes sense. Dork Diaries is a series of children's graphic novels created and written by Rachel Renee Russell. Her daughter.
You know, hopefully, yeah, I'll have something more to say about this because I have not read this book, so, you know, perhaps I might, say something besides, oh, I remember this part and that part, because I have not read any of this series, as I've mentioned before, so I don't know, who knows, perhaps this part will be a bit more interesting.
Daughter Nikki Russell illustrates the books as well, and of course is the inspiration for our titular character, Nikki Maxwell. Although according to Rachel, the things that happen in the books are partially based on her two daughters, Erin and Nikki. But of course the name Nikki comes from her daughter Nikki. I'd say probably about 80% of what we put in the book series is true or based on a true story or incident that actually happened to my two daughters, Erin and Nikki. When they
That's right. What was the author's name again?
They don't ever show them doing it in the book. That makes sense. Rachel Renee Russell. Her daughter Nikki Russell illustrates Nikki on her two daughters, Erin and Nikki. Two daughters, Erin and Nikki. When they were in middle school, they were smart. They did their homework on time, they enjoyed having nice relationships with teachers, and they answered questions. And they were considered by a lot of people to be dorks. And they were teased, not invited to parties. Kids made fun of their clothes and the way they talked, and it was just horrible, horrible, horrible. One morning, Erin had just had enough. She's like, you know what? I'm proud to be a dork, and being a dork is cool. And I'm unique, and I'm different, and I'm creative. So I took that whole concept and basically just channeled it into Dork Diaries. Since the first book, Tales from a Not So Fabulous Life, was published back in 2009, Dork Diaries has spent 331 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, sold over 55 million books worldwide, and the series has only continued to expand with 17 books as of 2025. Our main character, Nikki Maxwell, is set to start attending this new fancy private school known as Westchester Country Day. The only reason she's able to go there at all is because her dad was able to get her a scholarship through his contract with the school as a bug exterminator. From the get-go, Nikki's attention is focused on fitting in at her new school. The way this book starts is actually kind of crazy. The first line is literally, "Sometimes I wonder if my mom is brain dead. Then there are days when I know she is, like today." And this is all because Nikki's mom won't buy her a new cell phone. Nikki knows this would impress the CCP, cute, cool, and popular group at her school. And Nikki would save up the money herself, but sadly she's just won't buy her new cell phone. Nikki knows this would impress the CCP.
It's funny because CCP is also an acronym for the Chinese Communist Party. So, I think that I feel that might actually be a great comparison. Actually, I know I haven't read books, but I have a feeling that this CCP is probably not the nicest group. Judging from how these stories generally walk and all that.
Cute, cool, and popular group at her school. And Nikki would save up the money herself, but sadly she's just totally addicted to drawing. So when her mom came home with a back-to-school present, she naturally assumed it had to be the phone she'd been asking about. However, Nikki was instead gifted the very book that she's begun writing in. Once the school year begins, Nikki was instead...
Huh. Strange. The way the font is Times New Roman or something like that. I mean, basically, the kind of font you would see printed, not handwritten. I think I prefer how how the font in the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books, because it looks like it's written by hand. Like how if you would open a diary or a journal, you would see handwriting. But here, this does not look like handwriting. I mean, sure, this is you could argue that this is easier to read and whatnot, but I don't know. It kind of takes one out of the immersion a bit.
Instead gifted the very book that she's begun writing in. Once the school year begins, though, we learn two things. One, her locker is conveniently next to Mackenzie Hollister, aka the most popular girl in school, and two, the school would be hosting their annual art competition and or art show. Not only is Nikki artist herself, but first place would receive a $750 cash prize. Sweet! That would be enough for me to get a cell phone, a new outfit from the mall, and art supplies. And there we have it. That right there is how you know this book was published in 2009. All of that for $750? That's a freaking steal! But when Nikki went to the office to fill out her entry form, she got cold feet. Because Mackenzie was there, and it turns out she's entering the competition too. Then, when the office assistant ended up asking Nikki if she was there to pick up a form for the art show, Mackenzie lets out the loudest laugh, like it's ridiculous for her to be entering this competition. So when Nikki ended up spotting a sign-up sheet for library shelving assistance in the corner of her eye, she jumped at the opportunity to sign up for that instead. Luckily, this ends up being a really good decision because she quickly befriends two of the LSAs named Chloe and Zoe. At first, she seems a little annoyed by them in her writing, but quickly begins to have this change of heart the more time she spends around the girls and the more things she learns about them. Like, for one, they hate Mackenzie Hollister probably as much as she does, and that she can really appreciate because she assumed the whole school, like, worshipped her. Thank goodness they do, honestly, because Mackenzie ends up finding out that Nikki is entering the competition after all. She catches Mackenzie spying on her even, and then the next day in the cafeteria, she trips her. Coincidence? I think not. My point is that Chloe and Zoe are kind enough to sit in the janitor's closet with her and actually help her get cleaned up after that whole ordeal. But I'll be honest, I can't even blame her initial judgment because they do a lot of stuff in this book that piss me off. Like when the librarian Miss Peach announced that she'll be taking 6 of her most hardworking and committed LSAs on a 5-day field trip to the New York City Public Library in April to participate in National Library Week. God, that was a mouthful. Of course, Chloe and Zoe were stoked about this, and in my opinion, they let their excitement take control of their lives. While putting out a batch of new magazines in the library, Chloe spotted a page about tattoos, which inspired the idea of getting tattoos to promote reading. Like, obviously doing extra stuff to help out in their LSA positions is good too, but what Nikki points out is that everyone else is going to be doing that too to secure a spot for the trip. So that's why they come up with this idea, because they want to stand out. And while the concept is pretty cool, Nikki was immediately against it due to
the fact that they're in like 8th grade probably.
understandably their parents shut down this idea and the girls are just really devastated about.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like you're not allowed to like get a tattoo before you turn 18 without, at least not without your parents' permission. So yeah, yeah. No, school is definitely gonna let that fly. I mean, yeah, schools, hit it when a kid, has the hood up, and all that, or is wearing hats, like, no wearing hats in school. Like, yeah, obviously, that plan is not gonna work at all.
This so much so that in PE they spent 45 minutes venting about it instead of working on the ballet dancing assignment they were just assigned. To make a long story short, they got a D on that project, which actually could have been avoided if they just did the work like Nikki wanted them to from the beginning. And this is just never mentioned again. I mean, they make up for it, I'll give them that, they make up for it by the end, but we're not there yet. You see, Chloe and Zoe come up with this elaborate scheme to run away and live in the underground, like, secret tunnels beneath the New York Public Library, and then just hang out for 7 whole months until National Library Week rolled around in April. Chloe said residing in the library was going to be an
Alright. Okay, no, that just sounds crazy.
exhilarating experience because they could read all the books they wanted 24 hours a day without having to check them out or reshelve them. During this time, Nikki became so desperate to change their minds in time that she had nightmares about them bringing rats to her future wedding. So she comes up with this idea of designing temporary tattoos for Chloe and Zoe, but the only rule was if she did this for them, they couldn't run away to New York. This would eventually morph into a book charity event where anyone could donate books for a temporary tattoo designed by Nikki in return, because by chance, Nikki decided to draw her friend's tattoos during lunch one day, and this attracted the attention of a guy named Jason Feldman. Oh, no big deal really. Jason just happens to be the most popular guy in the entire school and president of the student council. But he came to their table to just sit and watch. And what would you do next in this situation? Well, on the spot, Chloe and Zoe ended up making a sign-up sheet, of course. At first, this was seen as a positive thing. They were all excited because more CCPs ended up coming to their table, as well as other students who were just curious about what was going on. However, as the days progressed, Nikki had to do more and more extreme amounts of tattoos in a day, and even over the course of a week, it was an insane amount. For some reason, Chloe had also started charging 2 books per tattoo instead of 1, and eventually they end up charging 3 books per tattoo, which is just, I know it's for charity, but a bit gluttonous. Eventually, the cheer squad was even hunting Nikki down because they wanted tattoos for their big game on Friday, or they say specifically they want her to come up with a super hot tattoo for them. All Nikki could really say was everyone had to sign up with Zoe first. However, Zoe had a waiting list of 149, and since the game was on Friday, they had convinced Chloe to place them at the top of the wait list because the cheer captain, Alexis, had already donated 3 books for each tattoo. What really upset Nikki, though, was how she was completely unaware 149 people were scheduled to get tattoos from her. Like, again, we're at school to learn, too. And Nikki had a French test on Friday and a geometry test the following Monday. So, if she's doing all these tattoos, how in the world is she gonna make the time to study? On Thursday, she did 14 tattoos at lunchtime.
Yeah, this ain't good.
And another 10 in her LSA time, which is 33 tattoos in one day, by the way. Only for Zoe to start talking behind her back, saying that she worked slower than a constipated snail in an ice storm, which is such an oddly specific insult. Also, if you thought 149 was outrageous, just wait to hear how many people are on the waiting list for next week. 216. The next day, when Nikki went to their usual table 9 at lunch, there were 25 people waiting, and Chloe and Zoe were nowhere to be found because they were at the CCP table on the other side of the cafeteria flirting with Jason, Ryan, and Matt. But that wasn't even what Nikki freaked out about. She drew the line when she saw Mackenzie giving Chloe and Zoe invitations to her rescheduled party for next Saturday. Near the beginning of the book, Mackenzie had given Nikki one of these very same pink envelopes, only for Mackenzie to get mad at her because Nikki had misunderstood, and Mackenzie really just wanted her to pass the invitation along to her friend Jessica. I really sympathize with Nikki in this situation because why would you just hand her an envelope without being like, hey, would you mind passing this to my friend first? Like, of course I would assume the invitation is for me. Anyway, Nikki ended up quitting right then and there because obviously her friends weren't being very fair to her here. This situation kind of made her rethink everything. She began to wonder if they had been just using her for earning that trip to New York all along. She felt this sadness of sorts because to her they meant a lot and she thought they were really her real friends. Nikki didn't necessarily have time to worry about this anymore though, because not only did she have a geometry test on Monday, but the art competition would be happening that day as well. So Sunday night she decides to stay up and study since she's hoping to get her grade up to a B. Her mom comes in around midnight and informs her she'll be gone super early tomorrow to chaperone for her little sister Brianna's field trip. So it's important she sets an alarm because again, she has so much going on tomorrow. Unfortunately for Nikki though, this doesn't happen because she ends up falling asleep while studying. This causes her not to wake up until 7:36 in the morning. Her first class begins at 8. Now we know about Nikki's dad and his pest control business, but did you know his car has a giant roach on it? Nikki hates this. But that morning, he is the only person there to give her a ride, and she's actually lucky she even caught him in time with how late she got up. But things only get worse when Nikki gets to school and Mackenzie is already giving her a hard time about the Roachmobile. Nikki's art that she ended up bringing to school that day for the competition was actually a watercolor piece that she ended up gifting to her parents, but they were still letting her enter it in the competition. Nikki had leaned it against her dad's car while getting her backpack, but because Mackenzie had distracted her, she wasn't able to pick up the painting before he pulled away. And now all she could do is just watch in horror as her dad runs over all her hopes and dreams. At this point, she just feels totally defeated. She sits on the
Oh, that's awful.
curb, soaking wet from the pouring rain, and just cries. That is until she is met with a familiar face, Brandon Roberts, standing right above her on the sidewalk with his umbrella. Over the course of this book, despite Nikki being new and Mackenzie attempting to flirt with him every chance she gets, Brandon has shown Nikki so much kindness. For example, when Nikki gets tripped by Mackenzie in the cafeteria, he's actually the one who helps up Nikki from the ground and checks to see if she's okay. And even now, he takes this time to reassure Nikki that despite her artwork being in 27 pieces and covered in mud, it's still better than the paper dolls that Mackenzie is entering. Although in the moment this really helped Nikki feel better, the reality set in again once the pair walked inside to find Bug Girl written on her locker. Nikki decided then and there she couldn't take it anymore. She decided to call her parents, and the next day she ended up staying home from school. And at this point, her parents seemed to be really concerned about her, so they agreed to let her transfer schools after all. However, when she arrives on campus early the next day to get her stuff and, go through the paperwork, she's met with a shocking realization. So the day before, when she stayed home, she decided to call the library and check up on things. But this just left her with more questions. She was even more confused because she learns that Brandon is there with the girls in the library. She assumes they must be all working against her and hate her now, especially considering how vague they were on the phone call. Well, the truth is, Nikki was completely mistaken. Brandon was there because he had actually taken photos of many of the different tattoos Nikki had done the past week. And the three of them worked on this and then turned it in for Nikki for her art show. So even though Nikki hadn't been there to see it, she ended up being the winner after all thanks to her friends. Now for the verdict we've all been waiting for. Which
That's a nice ending.
book is better? Truthfully, if I had to pick one series over the other, I feel like both have their iconic moments. And as a kid, I was equally obsessed with both. When it comes to plot, I feel like Dork Diaries is a
Hold on a minute, I need to take this. And we are back. And this video is almost over, so I think I'll just finish it now. After just making a part 2 out of the last couple minutes, it would probably just be kind of a dumb idea. Yeah, let's finish this up now.
a bit stronger, it's more cohesive, and flows together better. But when it comes to humor, I feel like Diary of a Wimpy Kid had me laughing out loud more. I think it's because partially as I've gotten older, I've developed a bit of a disdain for Dork Diaries, because I found out in this first initial book, even though in my copy it doesn't have it, Nikki literally says the R slur, and I already know what the comments are gonna say. It literally doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, and come on, I mean, you can just tell by the art style that it's from the 2000s. Everybody was just saying retarded and all that. I think it's not the biggest deal. Honestly, I feel like actions are more important than words and all that. Having a bit of a disdain just because they killed or just. I mean, honestly, it's more just an an exclamation of saying stupid because it's a more more punchier version of just stupid and all that. It's not exactly hold on a minute. Right now, where were we? Oh yes, the word retarded. Honestly, I feel like it's a bit of an overreaction and all that. I mean, okay, let me put up an example. Honestly, the real problem is more so with intent, and honestly, words on that is only bad if you're intending to, just make fun of people who actually have a form of retardation and all that. In the beginning of the book, the character calls the mother brain dead and all that. Like, obviously, it's not supposed to be taken too seriously. And also, a lot of people use the word lame and all that, but like, I mean, honestly, like, typically lame is seen as something as according to the Oxford Dictionary and other dictionaries. Lame is often used as something that is uninspiring or dull, but it recently means that a person is unable to walk or move and all that. Typically an animal like a lame horse and all that, but yeah, it was recently a way of describing people with a physical disability and all that. And yet, people use a lame all the time. Even people who don't want to say anything ill about disabled people. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel the same way about the retarded. And besides, I mean, I'm autistic, so I think I ought to have some authority about what is and isn't offensive to the neurodivergent community. But then again, C is a YouTube, so who knows? Maybe C's neurodivergent as well. Who knows? I mean, I think I mean, for that alone to be seen as a reason to disdain, to feel disdain towards Bug. I mean, it seems a bit over dramatic. And believe me, I know a thing or two about being overly dramatic. yeah, yeah. Yeah, but enough talk. Let's see what she has to say now.
Matter, it's not a slur. I get these comments every time I talk about this, but I will continue to talk about it. The day that everyone collectively
Alright, it's time to listen to her preach.
stops using that word and realizes it's a slur, we'll finally have peace. I think
No, you seem like a nice person, a nice individual, a nice young woman, but I think I speak for most people here to say that what you just said is, well, retarded. I think this is, why the water isn't gonna go up because, it's very much a punch. It's more punchy or it's more stand out than stupid or ridiculous. That it very much just really just shows what you mean. I mean, now of course, it shouldn't be used without completely without care, but yeah. I mean, just and also, I mean, a lot of times it's not really a slur. A slur is only a slur when it's used to hurt or demean people. Oh, well, okay, I say because it's being used to hurt, but a specific group and all that. Like, I don't think people I mean, okay, I'm gonna look up the definition of slur. Okay, slur. Definition. Okay. Okay, yeah, that's verb, noun. Okay. Okay, well, one definition is an insinuation or allegation about someone that is likely to insult them or damage their reputation. Okay, so yeah, I guess retarded is technically slow, but that definition. So it's idiot and stupid and dumb and mad. Mad has been used to as a way to describe a person who's insane and all that. And insane is a slow. Any slanderous thing is slow, lame. I'm bringing this back again. Lame. Everybody says lame. This is lame. That is lame. He is lame. Lame's a slow. Every insult is a slur. I mean, the only difference is that some slurs are more insulting than others. I know that, obviously, I feel like racial slur is worse than, the, however you would categorize the slur retarded and all that. Honestly, I'm gonna be honest. I mean, it's mean word and all that, but I mean, I wouldn't say it's on par with the what is collectively known as the N word and all that. Like, I mean, hmm. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I guess it's very much so much more so society and all that, and until the day, society collectively, decides that retarded is too offensive. Which, I mean, considering the current social climate is, I mean, it's not gonna happen very soon. I guess it depends on what groups of people you run around with. Like, to some people, yeah, retarded is just as meaningless as stupid. While with others, I know it's as harmful as what the word I'm not allowed to say. Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I think instead of just, I think it would be more productive instead of saying this word is bad and nobody is allowed to say it. Instead, we should just be nicer to each other and just treat people nicer. I mean, honestly, actions and intent matter more than the words we say. So yeah, yeah. After all, people don't get upset if you call a movie lame, for example, but calling somebody a lame, that's more hurtful than calling a film or a song kind of lame and all that. But so yeah. Besides, I don't know. I think she's just being very ridiculous,
I think I just relate to Nikki in a lot of ways, and I think that's why now when I read a book like this, I'm less inclined to want to choose it as my favorite, even though I do think the plot is stronger. But let me.
Yeah. Honestly, I guess that is the thing with the growing up. Like, when I was younger, when I was a kid, I related to Greg Heffley more, but now I don't relate to Greg Heffley at all and all that. But so yeah. Honestly, it's very much just growing up, like the actions of middle schoolers to an adult. A lot of the things middle schooler does will be seen as a pointer to a fully grown person, yeah. Middle school will find anything a middle schooler does as relatable. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
Let me know your opinions on Dork Diaries and Diary of a Wimpy Kid in the comments, as always. I think Diary of a Wimpy Kid Book 1 I can rate at a solid 8.5, and Dork Diaries I'm gonna rate at a 6.5. Maybe that's a little mean, but
Yeah, I say that's a bit mean. Honestly, I don't know. Yeah, Yeah, from what I've, from the plots, I mean, the plot seems a bit, generic and all that, but, I mean, hmm, hmm, I don't know, I mean, I say, they're kind of, bit equal, well, I don't know, I guess your ranking's okay, and, I mean, honestly, again, I've not read any of the Dog Diaries series, so I don't know, and honestly, no, I guess, I mean, wouldn't say I'm against the idea of possibly reading it in the future, but wouldn't actually, well, personally purchase them because, I mean, they're very clearly girls books and all that, and yeah, just, yeah, I mean, society dictates that a boy cannot, go anywhere near, something that girlish, or not, at least not in public. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, and besides, I mean, honestly, I guess I'm not in the a situation where I can just, spend a whole bunch of money on just a book that I might see as no okay or decent and all that. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much everything I have to say about that right now.
I feel like there are definitely better books in the series, so here are my final rankings. If I'm not pleased with them, maybe I can redeem myself by continuing to rank the next two books in the series. But that all depends on you, and if you guys actually like this video or the concept. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'm so sorry that this video kept getting delayed. It feels really good to be sitting here again and creating. As always, shout out to my Patreon members. I appreciate your guys' patience and support so much. And for updates on my future uploads,
Uh, let's see, some say Greg Heffley is the best. Others say that Nikki Maxwell is. Deep down, we all know Jamie Kelly is. I have no idea who Jamie Kelly is. Who is that? I don't know. Uh, although I was, as a kid, I think Nick Maxwell is a overall, just better member of society than Greg Heffley. Know that, and it definitely, nicer. Uh, oh. Oh, dude, I'm sorry. That's another series that I've heard of, but know absolutely nothing about. Huh. Nikki was writing a diary. Greg was. Okay, that's a bit ridiculous. Ugh. So fun and games till Big Nate rolls in. Greg Heffley is stuck at a Malcolm in the Middle episode where Nikki is. Honestly, I think that's the best description right here. This should tell you everything you should know about those two. I think that's a very apt description right there. Yep. Me, a Dog Diaries movie now would be so weird because it's so 2010s. Ugh, yeah. I mean, you can just tell by the art style that is definitely very much early 2010s girly art style. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, so 2010 Disney Channel original movie coded. Yeah. Oh, oh, is that true? Oh, I didn't know that. As you know, sometimes I think I'm too chronically online, but then I read something like this and I realize, okay, maybe I'm not that chronically online. Let's see. I mean, honestly, even now, I mean, just hearing somebody, talk about this, made me feel sad. I mean, yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like, if anybody's, and of creative, I mean, I think that's a thing that anybody can just, really tug at your heartstrings. Yeah. Hmm. Hey. Okay. Uh, I feel like Nikki Maxwell and Greg Heffley would absolutely hate each other. Nikki is empathetic, bubbly, kind, outgoing, and loving girl. Sure, she has her flaws, but she's generally a good person at the end of the day. Greg is literally the exact opposite. Be an arrogant, narcissistic, self-centered, manipulative sociopath, treats everybody around him like garbage, and delusionally puts himself on a pedestal like he is better than everybody else. Nick would be completely repulsed by him and his behavior, and would most definitely call him out for it. And Greg might delusionally view Nicky as stuck up and toxic, refusing to acknowledge his own faults, though. I believe this was meant to write faults instead of flaunts. Yeah, that is very, very true. And that's typical. um, hmm. Oh, well, I think I kind of enjoyed the video a bit. I hope you enjoyed me reacting to it. This definitely is not a very good video. But yeah, I think I might check out a few other videos of yours at my own time in the future. And I mean, it seems a bit interesting and all that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and have a good day and goodbye.